other year. Like a lot of groups out there I can name, but I ain't even gonna exploit them on the TV.
Redman has been the hip-hop wildcard for decades, smoking blunts, spitting fire, and cracking jokes. But beneath the humor, there's always been friction, quiet rivalries, explosive fallouts, and grudges that fans never heard about until now. These are not random names. Each one tells a story of survival in the 90 seconds rap game, a world where respect meant everything and the wrong move could end your career, or worse. Stay tuned, because once you hear the 6 names on the list, you'll never look at Redman the same way again. Starting with number 6, we have MC Hammer. In the early 90 seconds, hip-hop was split down the middle. On one side, you had hardcore lyricists and street-certified MCs fighting for respect. On the other, you had pop-friendly rappers selling millions of records to suburban America. At the center of that pop wave was MC Hammer's flashy dance moves, shiny suits, and platinum sales. To Redman, that image represented everything fake and commercial about rap. And he didn't just keep that opinion to himself, he aired it out. On his 1992 debut album, What? On the album, Redman made it clear he wasn't here for gimmicks. In the track Blow Your Mind, Redman throws direct shots at Hammer's style, mocking his dance-heavy mainstream approach. He painted himself as the anti-Hammer. Gritty, raw, no-nonsense hip-hop. This wasn't a subtle shade, it was a statement of identity. Redman was letting fans know, I ain't Hammer. This is real rap. Redman's hate wasn't personal. At first, it was philosophical. For Redman, Hammer symbolized selling out. In interviews, Red often clowned rappers who danced or chased radio hits, and Hammer was the poster boy for that era. But here's where it gets serious. MC Hammer wasn't just the flashy entertainer with parachute pants and big dance routines behind the glitter, was a man who didn't play about respect. According to multiple stories from the 90 seconds, Hammer had a reputation for confronting rappers who took shots at him. Sometimes it was a face-to-face conversation, other times it was through the muscle of his Oakland crew. Word spread quickly that Hammer wasn't afraid to back up his words with real action. Redman has spoken openly about this side of Hammer in interviews, making it clear that the stories weren't just rap folklore. He recalled that after his debut, What? The album dropped in 1992, Hammer wanted to have a talk with him about some of the slick disses on the record. While Redman laughs about it today, at the time it was no laughing matter. He knew Hammer had the kind of reputation you couldn't just brush off. In a Vlad TV interview years later, Redman explained that in the early 90 seconds, rappers, including himself, thought Hammer was the safe target. He was seen as commercial, mainstream, and an easy punchline for harder MCs trying to prove their credibility. Dissing Hammer was almost like a rite of passage for up-and-coming lyricists. But what they didn't realize was that Hammer wasn't just a pop star. He had deep ties to Oakland and connections in the streets that made him dangerous to underestimate. For Redman and others, this was a wake-up call. Behind the cartoonish image the media painted, Hammer was a man who demanded respect. And in the cutthroat world of 90 seconds hip-hop, that respect wasn't optional, it was enforced.
That nigga was deep with and he used to what anybody who talks.
On Drink Champs, Redman told a story about how dissing Hammer wasn't just about rap, it was about proving you were a real MC. Hammer represented the opposite, so calling him out was like a rite of passage. He admitted he went to Hammer because that's what hardcore fans wanted at the time, proof that you were about bars, not flashy dancing. So why did Redman hate Hammer? Because Hammer was everything Redman didn't want to be. Commercial, polished, and pop-friendly. For Redman, hating Hammer was less about the man himself and more about protecting hip-hop's underground integrity. Of course, as years passed, Redman mellowed out. He later gave Hammer props for being a businessman, a pioneer in rap marketing, and someone who could fill arenas when most MCs couldn't. But back in 1992, Redman hated what Hammer stood for. Number 5. Method Man. When fans think of hip-hop's greatest tag teams, Redman and Method Man always land near the top. From the cult classic How High to their joint albums that shook the industry, their partnership felt natural, two wild personalities who made chaos look cool. To audiences, it seemed effortless. But behind the smoke clouds and punchlines, their chemistry was more complicated than most fans realized. Redman has admitted in interviews that there were stretches where he hated Method Man's energy, not the man himself, but the way fame, ego, and constant pressure warped the vibe between them. The brotherhood was real, but so were the frustrations. The two first linked in the mid-1990 seconds when both were signed to Def Jam. Their bond sparked instantly sessions, non-stop jokes, and lyrical sparring that pushed them to outdo each other. They weren't just collaborators, they became cultural icons together. Yet, unlike most legendary rap duos, they weren't childhood friends with a shared history. They were two solo stars thrown into the same orbit by label vision and fan demand. That chemistry came naturally on stage, but behind closed doors, the cracks began to show. Redman recalled one particular moment that stuck with him. Method Man walked right up to him and, with his usual fiery confidence, said, "You let me do what I do." To Meth, it was probably just a statement of self-assurance. But to Redman, it felt like a challenge, almost a dismissal. It rubbed him the wrong way. In that instant, he saw the partnership not just as a brotherhood, but also as a battlefield of egos. On tour, Redman admitted he sometimes hated Meth's habits. Redman said Meth was too serious at times, while he was more about clowning and fun. Meth's temper was infamous. He didn't let disrespect slide, while Redman preferred to laugh things off. That contrast caused fights backstage. Redman has said, "We used to argue a lot. We are brothers, so sometimes I couldn't stand him." Fans never saw it, but the duo would sometimes go days without speaking, even while performing together. Redman has also hinted that the industry sometimes made him resent Meth. Method Man was already a Wu-Tang superstar, while Redman was still building his lane. Labels sometimes pushed Meth more, making Red feel overshadowed. Redman revealed that when Def Jam was focusing heavily on Meth's solo success, he felt like he had to fight for his own space. That business imbalance turned into personal tension. Even during their Hollywood run, cracks showed. When How High became a cult classic, fans expected sequels, TV deals, and more. Instead, the business politics stalled projects, and Meth blamed labels and producers sometimes. Redman felt Meth blamed him too. In an interview, Redman was asked if he ever hung out with Method Man, and he said hell no, he never hung out with him. So,
you and Meth get to hang out a lot these days still?
Hell no.
No?
No. We do shows and we come back home.
why did Redman hate Method Man? The truth is, sometimes the person who's closest to you is also the one who can get under your skin the most. Their legendary partnership wasn't always smooth sailing. Behind the iconic records, movies, and tours were two strong personalities clashing. Both were stars in their own right, each with a sharp wit, a heavy presence, and an unshakable drive. But did Redman truly hate Method Man? In a sense, yes, but not in the way people might imagine. He hated the late-night arguments about creative control. He hated the ego battles that came with two giants trying to share one spotlight. He hated the weight of business pressures that sometimes made their brotherhood feel like a transaction. Yet beneath all of that noise, there was always respect, always loyalty, always love. Their version of hate was the kind only real brothers can have, the kind that shows up in loud fights, heated words, and slammed doors, but always ends with laughter, handshakes, and stronger bonds. For Redman and Method Man, friction wasn't weakness. It was proof that the bond was real, unshakable, and built to last. At number 4, we have Mobb Deep. For Redman, one of the most uncomfortable rivalries of his career didn't come from a pop act or an industry outsider. It came from fellow hip-hop giants, Queensbridge legends Mobb Deep. And the spark was simple: raw disrespect. Redman has often revisited a particular night at Harlem's Apollo Theater, a venue famous for testing artist metal. The Apollo crowd was ruthless if you weren't on point. They'd let you know in seconds. But that night, the hostility didn't come from the audience. It came from the dressing room, where Prodigy and Havoc sized him up. According to Redman, Mobb Deep didn't question his rhymes, but instead dismissed his whole vibe. Riding high on their Queensbridge reputation, they embodied dark, gritty street rap. To them, Redman's wild humor, funk-driven beats, and Jersey-bred swagger didn't align with what they saw as real hip-hop. Their shade wasn't subtle, it carried the weight of dismissal. Redman later admitted he felt that sting deeply. He wasn't just battling for crowd approval anymore, he was wrestling with the lack of respect from peers he admired. For him, that Apollo night became a reminder that in hip-hop, some of the fiercest rivalries weren't fought on stage but backstage. For Mobb Deep, Redman seemed cartoonish. For Redman, Mobb's cold shoulder felt like an insult to his authenticity. That clash of vibes created tension anytime they crossed paths. On multiple occasions, including interviews and live shows, Redman didn't hide it. He said Mobb Deep never respected him, even though they were both Def Jam affiliates at different points. He admitted he carried a chip on his shoulder because he felt they judged him before giving him a chance. In one story, Redman recalled feeling like he had to survive the Apollo showdown, not against the crowd, but against the energy from Mobb Deep. Redman never dropped a diss record on Mobb Deep because that wasn't his lane. But in his interviews, you can hear the bitterness. He respected their craft, but hated the lack of respect he got in return. To him, hip-hop was about unity through skill. To Mobb Deep, it was about realness, and they didn't think Redman measured up. That wound stuck with him. Number 3 is EPMD. In the early 90 seconds, Redman was a hungry kid from Newark, freestyling at parties. EPMD spotted him, saw the raw talent, and invited him into the Hit Squad, the collective that included K-Solo, Das EFX, and EPMD. When Eric Sermon was asked what he saw in Redman, he didn't hold back.
Bring him into the fold.
Just the metaphors, the way that he rhymed, the wordplay.
Redman's first big look came on EPMD's 1990 album, Business as Usual, where he stole the show with fiery guest verses. From there, he was officially stamped as the next big Def Jam MC. But that's where the problem started. Redman has admitted in interviews that EPMD treated him like a little brother, but also like property. Redman said EPMD tried to manage him in ways that limited his freedom. When Redman started blowing up as a solo star, EPMD allegedly tried to assert authority over his decisions, almost as if he owned a piece of Redman's success. When EPMD broke up in 1992-1993, the Hit Squad split too. Lines were drawn. EPMD kept the Hit Squad name. Eric Sermon formed the Def Squad, bringing in Redman, Keith Murray, and later Method Man. That decision was huge. It showed where his loyalty really stood. If Redman had deep respect for PMD, he would have stayed. Instead, he broke away and sided with Sermon. Why? According to Redman, PMD wasn't genuine. He felt PMD was manipulative, and the robbery rumors surrounding PMD only fueled the mistrust. On Drink Champs, Redman admitted he had love for PMD early on, but their relationship soured because of funny energy and control issues. In other interviews, Redman said that while EPMD opened the door for him, it was Eric Sermon who gave him freedom to shine as an artist. When asked about EPMD years later, Redman carefully avoided direct disses but made it clear, "E was the one who really let me be me." That's a subtle but powerful statement. Redman has never gone on record saying, "I hate EPMD." But the tension is undeniable. He distanced himself from EPMD after the breakup. He stayed with Def Squad for life, riding with Sermon instead of the man who first co-signed him. He's thrown light shade in interviews about control freaks and people trying to own artists clear digs at EPMD. So why did Redman hate EPMD? Because in his eyes, EPMD wasn't just a mentor, he was a manipulator. The man who gave him his start also tried to clip his wings. For Redman, the hate wasn't about denying EPMD's role in his come-up. It was about refusing to let anyone, especially PMD, control his future. Stepping down to number 2, we have K-Solo. Both Redman and K-Solo came up out of New Jersey. They knew each other before the fame, long before Def Jam deals or magazine covers. But according to Redman, K-Solo betrayed him on multiple levels. In old interviews, Redman revealed that K-Solo used to steal his rhymes back when they were coming up together. K-Solo allegedly even went so far as to write letters while locked up using rhymes that weren't his. When Redman started bubbling under EPMD's wing, K-Solo painted him as a traitor for moving differently. The beef wasn't just about rap, it was about trust. But here's the breaking point. K-Solo's breakout track, Spellbound 1990, became the center of the controversy. The song showcased K-Solo spelling words out in his rhymes, a unique gimmick at the time. But Redman has claimed for years that he was the one who came up with that style first. But here's the breaking point. K-Solo's breakout track, Spellbound 1990, became the center of the controversy. The song showcased K-Solo spelling words out in his rhymes, a unique gimmick at the time. But Redman has claimed for years that he was the one who came up with that style first, and K-Solo jacked it. Fans who knew their early demos noticed the overlap between Redman's freestyle style and K-Solo's official debut. This wasn't just about biting, it was about snatching an identity. When the heat was on, did K-Solo stand tall or crumble under the pressure? Of course, K-Solo denied it all. He insisted the ideas were his, that Redman was bitter, and even tried to downplay Red's influence. But hip-hop insiders knew the truth. Both artists had run in the same circles in Jersey, and it was impossible for their styles not to cross. The question wasn't if Redman influenced him, it was how much. On Vlad TV, Redman doubled down, saying K-Solo not only stole his bars, but also threw dirt on his name in the streets. In other interviews, Redman described K-Solo as phony and someone who tried to act like a big brother while secretly undercutting him. Even Eric Sermon of EPMD, a man who tried to keep peace within his circle, admitted admitted the friction between Redman and K-Solo was undeniable. It wasn't just a matter of two artists competing for the spotlight. It was raw, unshakable tension. Sermon recalled that at certain points, they couldn't even be in the same room without the energy shifting. Silence would thicken, eyes would dart, and everyone around them felt that spark of hostility waiting to ignite. For Redman, this wasn't the type of beef that fans expected in hip-hop, two MCs trading bars and trying to outshine each other on stage or wax. He could handle that. In fact, Redman thrived on competition. He welcomed the challenge of going toe-to-toe with anyone willing to step into the lyrical ring. What he could not stomach, however, was the feeling of betrayal. To him, the situation with K-Solo wasn't about friendly rivalry. It cut deeper. Redman felt robbed of his style, robbed of his originality, and robbed of the trust he once thought existed between them. In his eyes, K-Solo didn't just sharpen his pen to come harder with rhymes. He stole Redman's creative essence, packaged it as his own, and then tried to outshine him with it. That kind of move wasn't just disrespectful, it was unforgivable. When Redman spoke about his disdain, he often returned to one point: respect. He could respect an MC who out-rapped him in a battle or dropped a verse so hard it turned heads. But what he couldn't respect was someone who took from him while pretending to be a brother in arms. To him, that wasn't competition, it was treachery. And that's why Redman's dislike for K-Solo has always carried a heavier edge than his disputes with other rivals. Other beefs came and went, rooted in ego or industry politics. But this one? It felt personal. K-Solo wasn't just another name in the rap game testing his skills, he was someone Redman once stood next to, someone who should have been an ally. Instead, he became a symbol of betrayal, a reminder that not every handshake in hip-hop meant loyalty. So when fans ask why Redman's beef with K-Solo felt different, the answer is simple. K-Solo wasn't just a rival, he was, in Redman's eyes, a snatcher of style, an unreal friend, and a backstabber. And betrayals like that don't fade easily. They leave scars that resurface every time the story is told. And finally, we reach number 1, LL Cool J. Redman came up in the early 90 seconds under the Def Jam umbrella, the same label that launched LL Cool J. But while LL was already a household name, an icon from the 80 seconds rap scene, Redman was the raw, unapologetic new blood with a wild style, humor, and hardcore lyricism. The clash? LL was famously territorial. He didn't like anyone, even his label mates, challenging his throne as the GOAT. Redman allegedly admitted in interviews that LL wasn't exactly welcoming. Behind the scenes, LL viewed any hot MC on Def Jam as competition, not family. And Redman? He was a rising star with undeniable talent, which made him a threat. The clearest evidence of their tension comes from the infamous 4-3-2-1 track, 1997. The original song featured LL Cool J, Method Man, Redman, and Cannabis. But when Cannabis spit a line about borrowing the mic tattoo on LL's arm, LL felt disrespected and rewrote his verse to take shots at Cannabis. The drama exploded into a full-on beef between LL and Cannabis. But here's the twist. Redman sided with Method Man and Cannabis. Redman has openly said he wasn't feeling how LL handled the situation. Instead of embracing competition and passing the torch, LL turned insecure, sparking unnecessary beef. For Redman, this showed LL's ego was bigger than his love for hip-hop. In The Source, Redman opened up about his true feelings toward LL Cool J, making it clear that the rap legend wasn't exactly the type to embrace younger artists. According to Red, LL always needed to prove he was the alpha in the room, carrying himself with a competitive edge that often came off as arrogance. Method Man backed up this view, pointing to the making of 4-3-2-1. The track should have been a celebration of unity, several elite MCs coming together for the love of hip-hop. But LL's energy shifted the vibe, turning what should have been a showcase of collaboration into a subtle battleground. Instead of uplifting the collective, it became about proving dominance. Redman, though, never dedicated time to launching a full-blown diss at LL. That wasn't his style. His artistry leaned more toward fun, creativity, and elevating the culture rather than dragging it down with bitter feuds. Still, if you listen closely to his interviews, you'll catch the quiet shade signs that while he respected LL's achievements, he had little patience for the ego. For Redman, hip-hop was supposed to be about sharpening skills together and raising the bar, not one man guarding the spotlight. And that's Redman for you, raw, unfiltered, and fearless enough to say the names most rappers keep quiet about. These weren't just random grudges. They were scars from an era where respect was survival. Some of these beefs burned out. Some still sting decades later, but every single one shaped Redman into the legend he became. Now the real question is, do you agree with his list? Or did he leave somebody out? Drop your take in the comments, hit that like button if you live for these untold hip-hop stories, and make sure you're subscribed with the bell on Because trust me, the next one we uncover is going to blow your mind.